I'm not 6'5". Or whatever Ken is. This is better. Boy, where am I going to have to come? Halfway back to the... Good evening. It's so good to be here in the middle of the week. If your week has been like mine, it's been a fast and furious one in a lot of ways. And it's always good to slow down and to be able to see the faces of people that we love, see the faces of people that share the same like precious faith, and have the opportunity to recharge our batteries, I guess, so we can try to make it through Thursday and Friday. So it's good to see you here this evening. Ken asked me, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago, if I would fill in for him this evening, and I told him I would try. He said he had been going over the introduction to the book of Proverbs, and so he said it's open season. You can do anything you want to do in Proverbs. And sometimes while that may seem like that's easy to do, when you look at Proverbs, you see all the different topics and all the different ideas and the different concepts in it. It's not so easy because you have to decide on which one you want to do. So I've picked one this evening that I think all of us at one time or another have been guilty of, and we all have to guard against, because I think it affects everyone. It doesn't make a difference how old you get. It affects, I think, all of us. Tony had given me a verse. He said Ken had asked for any verses that you might have that is your favorite. And so Tony gave me one, Proverbs 1:7. It's a very good verse. It's a basic, fundamental verse that will eradicate, if you wish, if you please, the topic that I'm going to talk about this evening. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." When an individual or individuals don't fear God, do not respect God, who He is, what He's done, what He can do, then that individual is going to live a life of their own choosing. And that is a one-way street for destruction. All we have to do is look around at our world today and our society today. The general public doesn't fear God. All they say they do. But then if you look at the way they live, if you look at the things that they believe, the way they talk, the way they act, they really don't fear God. To too many people, God is just, quote, the old man upstairs. I've heard that all my life. Man is trying to bring God down on our level. We can't bring God down on our level. We may try, but it'll never happen. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the United States and around the world. It's actually not one disease, but it's a group of diseases that affects the heart. Sometimes these diseases can show up early in life. Sometimes they show up later in life. Well, one thing is for sure, they can often be prevented by healthy lifestyle choices. While many people know and seek immediate medical attention if they experience sudden and severe chest pains, too many times and too often these people are not aware of these early warnings and signs and symptoms that may indicate heart disease. As great as heart disease is today, it is not the greatest problem. What is the greatest problem in the world today?
Sin.
Sin? That's right. Sin is the greatest problem. Some people may say unbelief, lying, murder, homosexuality, sexual immorality, or maybe idolatry, materialism. These are all expressions of sin. Sin is at the root of all of these problems that we have today. So what is the greatest sin problem in the world today? Money? Stephen?
Selfishness.
Okay. Any others? Homosexuality.
Not letting other people know about God.
Okay. All right. These are all great problems. But I'd like to suggest to you tonight, they're not the greatest. I'd like to suggest to you tonight that there's something at the root of all of these problems. And all of these sins can be traced back to one thing. I'd like for us to consider one of these conditions and the group of conditions that affect the heart, the spiritual heart. C.S. Lewis, on page 197 and 198 of his publication, Mere Christianity, made this statement in reference to this particular heart problem. There is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when he sees it in someone else, and of which hardly any people except Christians ever imagine that they are guilty themselves. I have heard people admit that they are bad-tempered or that they cannot keep their head about girls or drink or even that they are cowards. I do not think I have ever heard anyone who is not a Christian accuse himself of this vice. And at the same time, I have very seldom met anyone who was not a Christian who showed the slightest mercy to it in others. There is no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we are more unconscious of it in ourselves. And the more we have it in ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. The vice I am talking about is, any ideas? Pride or self-conceit. All of these sin problems that were mentioned a while ago can all be traced back to pride. Pride is at the root of these sin problems. And the virtue opposite of it in Christian morals is called humility. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. What is pride? It's an emotional state in which an individual considers themselves more important than others. We see it all the time. It's my way or it's nobody's way. My way, my ideas, superior to other people. And we show this by certain actions. And these actions oftentimes cause hurt feelings, causes problems. St. Augustine said, The love of one's own excellence is what he calls pride. Pride is sometimes viewed as corrupt or as a vice, sometimes as proper or as a virtue. Now, the pride I'm talking about tonight is not from a positive standpoint. We should take what we call pride in what we do. The pride I'm talking about tonight is of a negative connotation. The kind that exalts a person above other people, exalts their status above other people's status. The scriptures completely condemn this. And I want us to concern ourselves this evening with this negative aspect that a faithful child of God should never cultivate and should never possess. What are some other words for pride? Arrogance, haughtiness. What about vainglory? Puffed up, egotism, conceit, snooty. All of these things we try to give the definition for pride. And it's based upon the fact of how individuals act. Mankind realizes that this kind of negative pride is not a good thing. Too many people spend money they earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like, according to Will Rogers. And that's true. C.S. Lewis, again in his Mere Christianity, said a proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. Andrew Murray said, pride must die in you, or nothing of heaven can live in you. Voltaire, we are rarely proud when we are alone. Why?
Because we're with the one we love.
That's right. There's no one that we can, put forth our superiority or our excellence over them. According to Lewis again, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man. It is the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. Once the element of competition is gone, pride is gone. And Ann Landers, if you put any stock in what she says, said that don't accept your dog's admiration as conclusive evidence that you are wonderful. I think it's a pretty good advice. Proverbs 18 says, before destruction the heart of a man is haughty, but humility goes before honor. So what the writer of Proverbs is saying here is that a proud heart, if it's not held in check, if it's not controlled, will lead to that individual's destruction. Well, what's God's attitude about this negative pride? What does God think about it? Proverbs 8:16 says, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance and the evil way, and the perverted mouth I hate. Proverbs 6:16 through 19, he said, there are 6 things which the Lord hates, yea, 7 which are an abomination to him. And the first one that's listed is pride, haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brethren. So God's not in favor of pride. What was God's greatest action to show that He is not a proud God? Who did He put on this earth to save you and me. He gave up His only begotten Son. God could have destroyed man with a blink of an eye. You sinned, you don't deserve it. But He loved us, and He sent His Son to die on us, to die on the cross so that we could live. The ultimate example of humility is Jesus Christ. Christ had the power. When they put Him on the cross, He had the power to call down 10 legions of angels, whatever how many He wanted to bring, and destroy everybody that was trying to inflict pain on Him. Now, if I were in His place and I had that power, from a human standpoint, I'd probably, come on, angels, I need some help. I need to get out of this. But not Christ. Christ loved you and me so much that He was willing to go through that pain, that humiliation, that agony, in order that we one day might be able to live with Him and His Father and the angels in heaven. Let's look at some of these examples of pride. What are some of the comrades of pride? We've already mentioned one. Of course, the synonym we said was haughtiness, vainglory, boastfulness, conceit, egotism. Haughtiness is showing dislike or disrespect for something or others to promote self-importance or superiority. Why does it show contempt to others? An individual who is pride, why do they show contempt to other individuals? What are they trying to promote?
Themselves.
They're trying to promote themselves. If they don't show contempt or dislike or disfavor or disrespect to other individuals, they can't promote themselves. They can't promote their own agenda. For pride not to be haughty is to contradict the nature. It annuls the idea of me first attitude. Romans 12 and verse 13 says, "For though the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith." And that's the problem. When a person is proud, from a negative standpoint, they're thinking too highly of themselves. Their heads are swollen, as we refer to it a lot of times. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's not anyone in here that feels differently than I do, but when I see an individual like that, it's not real pleasurable to be around that person. Because we know in reality what they can't see. They're not superior. Sometimes we refer to them as being spoiled, having their own way all the time. And that's not the kind of attitude that members of the church should have. Yes?
I was going to say, I think he's talking directly to Christians right here. Because the world, they don't know this. They don't know this here. And that's the same thing that God had trouble with Israel about. And we got a program right here.
That's right.
Israel fell into that trap. He talked to his own people. And this is talking directly to us.
That's right.
And the world, they don't know nothing about this until they come in. And I like to say, a lot of times we use heart, and I like to use the mind. I like to use the mind because a lot of folks out there in the world, they say, well, child, I know what's in my heart. They always reach for their chest. But God don't deal with the chest. It's his heart. He deals with his heart.
That's right.
I like to say mind instead of heart.
It's all in the person's mind. It's a person's mind. It's the attitude that an individual has. You know, he mentioned something, Brother Pedford mentioned something that he said that people in the world don't realize this, or they don't understand it. I wish it was just those people in the world. It's sad, but there are people in the church today that have the same attitude. And this is something that we need to, all of us need to examine ourselves and make sure that we're not guilty of this. What is scoffing? When somebody scoffs at someone, what does that mean? Pardon me?
Making fun of.
Okay. Yeah. It's to make fun of, it's to mock or to ridicule. And this happens sometimes when an individual is too proud and they're not getting their way. That's one of the techniques they use to ridicule, to scoff other people, make other people look little, make their ideas look insignificant. Because here again, they're trying to promote themselves. In Proverbs 21 and 24, it uses the word proud and haughty, scoffer are his names, who acts with insolent pride. So this individual is a proud individual, they're haughty, they ridicule, they make fun of. What's the difference between scoffing and boasting? Why do people boast? They are afraid that they're not going to get noticed. They're afraid that people are not going to give them the consideration they think that they need. So they boast. Proverbs 25:14 says, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of his gifts falsely. A person who is proud tries to make themselves look bigger and better, try to make themselves look superior. Now, why is it that God opposes pride? We already have seen that God hates it. Why? I want to suggest three things. And shame is one of the results that happens of an individual who is proud. I want to suggest that one reason why God hates pride and opposes those individuals who are proud is the fact that it is the ultimate sin against God. It assumes that man is self-sufficient and important enough to compete against God's greatness and his strength and his wisdom. What did Jeremiah have to say about that? In Jeremiah 10 and 23, Jeremiah said, I know, O Lord, that a man's way is not in himself, nor is it in a man who walks to direct his steps. Jeremiah was saying, I don't care how much you think of yourself. I don't care how much you boast. I don't care how proud you are. A man is not sufficient enough to direct his own steps. Look at people trying to direct their steps today. Where do they end up? They end up ruined. They end up destroyed because they're trying to direct their own steps. As Brother Pedford said, here's our guidebook, here's our map. This is the mind of God. If we go by this, then we're not going to present ourselves as being self-sufficient. We're not going to present ourselves as being greater than God. How many times do people replace God with themselves. It happens all of the time. Proverbs 3:5-7 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil." Second reason I'd like to suggest that God opposes pride is that it is an abomination to Him. It claims honor for itself. Only God can bestow honor, and does so in response to man's humility. Proverbs 16:5 says, "Everyone who is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Assuredly, he will not be unpunished." Haughtiness is conceitedness of ourselves and contempt of others. A proud look. As we've already said, this is the first thing that's listed in those 7 things that are abomination to God. In Proverbs 21:4, "Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked is sin." Pride opposes the first principle of wisdom, the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 1:7, as we mentioned earlier, says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. Pride opposes that. In Proverbs 8:13, "The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride and arrogance and the evil way and the perverted mouth I hate." Proverbs 15:33, "The fear of the Lord is the instruction for wisdom." And before honor comes humility. As we've said, pride is an abomination to God. Now, what are some of the consequences of this pride? What does it lead to? What happens when an individual does not control this desire of pride, this emotional state?
Pride goes before a fall.
Pride goes before a fall. Yes, Dennis?
I'd like to add one more thing to that list there about hates pride. Through his knowledge, he knows what kind of problems that causes and us. We can't be a loving person. We can't show reverent kindness. We can't share, like Stephen was saying, selfishness. If he sees what the problems that pride, self-pride, causes us to have.
Right. Because pride gets in the way of our being a loving person, being loving to our brothers and sisters. It's a roadblock. It's an obstacle that we can't cross as long as we allow pride to control us. I'd like to suggest that one of the consequences of pride is that it causes an individual to fail to seek and to believe. Psalm 10:4 says that it causes one not to seek nor to believe in God. And what does Psalm 14:1 say? "The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God." Yes, Jack?
Do you remember back in the 60s, the atheists came out with God is dead? And I was told somebody put a bumper sticker on their car, said, "My God is alive, sorry about yours."
I may have said this before, but I was doing undergraduate work at North Texas from 65 on. And, you know, when you're in college, you have to take some of these classes that sometimes you wonder, why am I in this class? What am I doing in here? What benefit has this for me? And about that time, I believe he was a German psychologist or philosopher named Nietzsche. And his theory or his idea was that God is dead, that he's not alive, that he no longer exists. And I can remember going down the sidewalk in front of the Student Union building one day, and in big letters somebody had written on the sidewalk in chalk, "God is dead, I killed him," signed Nietzsche. And somebody else had come along right up under that and put, "Nietzsche is dead, I killed him," signed God. But this idea that God is dead is in the heart of a fool, because God is not dead. God is alive. God is involved in human affairs today, contrary to the theory that God created this world in 7 days, 6 days, rested on the seventh day, and then he just sits back and let it take its course. That's as contradictory to the Old Testament and the New Testament is floods during harvest time. All you have to do is read the Old Testament and you can see where God raised up kings and kingdoms, raised up more kings and kingdoms to punish and defeat those that he had used to defeat others, to punish his own people because of their disobedience. Another reason why I believe that there's a consequence to pride is dishonor. Proverbs 11:2 says, when pride comes, then comes dishonor or disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom. Nothing good happens when individuals exhibit the emotion of pride. When people are so proud that they act like spoiled brats. They can't have their way. And so they get mad and they don't come to services. They don't want to get involved in anything. They lash out at other people. They try to ridicule other people. They try to put down other people's ideas and other people's plans, other people's suggestions. They say hurtful things to other people that may cause that individual to become discouraged and to fall away and never come back again. These things are not good. Elderships exhibit pride. Whenever they try to change what the scriptures have said, how worship should be conducted, how the body of Christ should function. In many places, the elderships have, quote, restudied the instrumental music and say that it's okay to have instrumental music during worship service. It's okay to put women in positions of authority or service that they should not be there. Elders have no more right to dethrone God's authority or the authority of Christ than anyone else. And they're going to be held responsible for that. They're going to have to answer for that. And whether it's because we want to fill the building, and so we're going to ease up on things, we're going to slack up on things, we're going to allow things to happen because that's how denominations and other congregations of the Lord's church are building up their attendance. They're allowing things to happen. God has given us a formula. And that formula is not to lay aside His will in order to get more people come into the congregation, into the service. Yes.
I've heard of some churches, denomination, paying people to come to worship service. Now, they're saying money's more important than God's word. And I can't buy that.
No. How many of you remember green stamps? S&H green stamps. Now that's getting back there, I know. but I know of a congregation, they're no longer there. They used to give green stamps to women who come to services. That was one of the benefits coming to service. They'd give them green stamps. Now, what was it? When you filled one a book, it was what? Worth $3? Of course, $3 back in the 50s and 60s was quite a bit more than it is now. But all of these little gimmicks, all of these little things that people try to get people to come into the doors of the church building. The Lord never told us to sit in the pew and give people stuff to come in. He told us to go out and knock on the doors. Yes.
Sometimes I have seen where ministers with so much education and pride that they almost destroy the church because of the way that they can put out these words and they'll say, you all don't understand what I'm talking about. Like you're down in the members and have a big head about yourself, and yet they just put themselves above the members and they can destroy a church like that.
That's right. That happens a lot, doesn't it? It sure does. So pride can come in all different ways, can't it? It can come in all different ways. As we said before, a Christian's feelings get hurt because some other saints have said that something to them that either in jest or in a moment of weakness or perhaps in a needed moment of honest assessment, they get their feelings hurt. And they don't want to participate. They don't want to be a part of that anymore. Local church leaders, as I said, decide that for the sake of being more popular and increasing the size of their congregation, they're going to compromise the clear-cut commandments of our Lord. To be faithful to the Lord and to obey Him, that cannot happen. It does in many, many different places. Who was an individual in the New Testament that was a very proud individual? Judas. That's not who I'm thinking of. Diotrephes. Wasn't he a proud individual? He would even try to run members of the church off, cause it to be so bad and unpleasant on them to make them to leave if they didn't bow down to him in his will. Any of the traveling evangelists who happened to be coming through that area that was bringing the good tidings, sound doctrine, he didn't like. He would try to do whatever he could to make sure that he didn't show them fellowship. And anyone who did, he would try to belittle them, try to make them leave. Diotrephes. We got a lot of people in our church, in the church today, that has that same kind of attitude. Yes.
I always think Diotrephes was the first pope because the scripture there in 3rd John says that he desired
The preeminence.
preeminence, yeah. And what do they call the pope now? His eminence.
Okay, Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others." This is one of the ways that we can curtail, one of the ways that we can suppress, one of the ways that we can keep from being too proud, is to look out for the interests of others and not merely only our own interests. To count other people worthy. To put other people first before we put our own selves first. A proud individual won't do that. A proud individual is going to try to promote themselves and their agenda. Another way in which we can combat being proud is to remember our supreme example of humility, Jesus Christ. Philippians 2:8-9, "Being found in appearance as a man, He humbled himself in becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. Was there anyone that deserved, other than Christ, that deserved being proud more than he? Look who he was. Deity. God, the Son of God. He had all power. He had already proven himself in every realm of life. Yet he didn't let it go to his head. He remained humble so that he could save you and I from our sins. We should possess self-respect and dignity. Leviticus 19:18 says, "But you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Remember, we're made in God's image. The pride condemned here is synonymous with arrogance, conceit, and self-importance. Another thing that helps us to overcome pride is that remember that Jesus Christ is coming soon. And He's going to recompense all of those that obey not His will. Jeremiah 10:23, we already mentioned, it's not in man. We're not sufficient enough to direct our own steps. Why was the world destroyed the first time?
Pride of life.
Because man did what was best in his own eyes. He was directing his own footsteps. He was saying that I have it in me to direct my own footsteps. And God says, no, you don't. Pride is sin. We need to be thankful to God and honor God for all things in all circumstances. Because James 1:17 tells us that every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. It's not from within man. It's from above. And cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your attention. And I guess Ken will be here next week, and I don't know what he's going to be covering next week.